Hello, hello. Welcome, Pedals to Wives. I'm going to wait a moment to let everyone get into the room and just make sure that everything's running properly before we get started today. Okay. Today we're going to be talking about attention is money. This is a thing that I've always wanted to say. That I always since I removed myself from the content of making any type of manipulation or technique or tactic type of content, I didn't want to say it publicly. But I realized that this is something that needs to be said, that attention is currency, whether it is with men, with money, with visibility. Attention is currency. Most women were never taught how money actually moves. They were taught how to be likable, how to be agreeable, how to be impressive without being demanding, how to be desirable without being costly. And when we act surprised, when the same women struggle with wealth, with commitment, with leverage, and with longevity in relationships, because attention is money, not metaphorically, not energetically, structurally. Where attention goes, resources follow. Where attention stabilizes, wealth compounds. Where attention leaks, money leaks. And women have been trained since girlhood to hemorrhage attention while calling it love, humility, or femininity. This conversation is not about manipulation, it's about capacity. It's about why some women are adored but unsupported, desired but not invested, invisible but not paid, loved but not protected. And while other women, often quieter, calmer, less performative, seem to receive more with less effort, it has nothing to do with luck. It has everything to do with where attention is seated in the body. Attention is finite currency. Attention is not infinite, it is a limited resource. And the nervous system treats it as such. Wherever your attention consistently rests becomes your economy. If your attention is always on managing your emotions, anticipating reactions, explaining yourself, staying palatable, staying chosen, your attention is not available for accumulation. It is being spent on regulation, not expansion. Men understand this instinctively in business. Time, focus, and presence are protected assets. Yet women are taught that attention is something to give freely, endlessly, without expectation of return. And then we wonder why some women are exhausted, resentful, and under resourced. Money does not move toward desperation. Money does not move towards chaos. Money moves towards containment. And containment is an intentional skill. So let's talk about why attention precedes money. Because money follows clarity, but clarity only emerges where attention is not fragmented. A woman who constantly explains herself does not lack communication skills. She lacks authority at the point of speech. Her attention is outside of her body, monitoring how she is received instead of resting in what she knows. A woman who is constantly visible but never compensated does not lack talent. She lacks attentional boundaries. Her presence is accessible but not anchored. A woman who is always busy but never wealthy does not lack ambition. She lacks stillness under responsibility. Money requires the nervous system to remain seated while being watched, while being expected, from while being resourced. Many women collapse at the point, not because they're incapable, but because they were never trained to hold attention without performing for it. So let's just jump into dating men and attention economics. Let's talk about it without fantasy. Men invest where their attention stabilizes, not where it spikes, not where it is chased, not where it is emotionally hijacked. Stability is what signals value. This is why the woman who texts less, speaks clearly, and does not emotionally scramble is often perceived as high value, even when she is doing less. She is not withholding, she is contained. Men do not fund chaos. They may desire it briefly, they may chase it recreationally, but they do not build with it. Female power has never been about seduction alone. It has always been about where she places her attention and where she leaves it there. So I really want to get into the female attention leak. So I'm just going to check in with everybody, see what everybody's saying, and see if you're in the chat, please just let me know you can see and hear me, and to make sure that this video is coming across your FYP, or if you're in the live stream and it's working out well, because I don't want to find out later on that was an issue. But let's talk about the female attention leak. Most women leak attention in 5 primary ways. They over-explain instead of state. They anticipate instead of allowing. They self-monitor instead of self-anchor. They overgive instead of receive. They interfere when things are working. Each of these behaviors drains currency. When attention is constantly moving outward, money cannot land, love cannot stabilize, authority cannot consolidate. This is why manifestation fails so many women. Not because they don't believe, but because belief without intentional discipline is just fantasy. So, visibility. Visibility without collapse. Visibility is one of the most misunderstood initiations for women. Being seen is not the same as being safe, and many women unconsciously associate visibility with danger, criticism, abandonment, overexposure, expectation. So the body pulls back right when attention increases, right when money is about to scale, right when commitment deepens. This is not self-sabotage. It is a capacity ceiling. Women who rise sustainably do not push through this. They expand their ability to remain visible without leaving themselves. That is female power. I want to go into receiving, even though I have plans on talking more in depth about this. How receiving has become a debt, how receiving has become an obligation or repayment. Receiving is where many women fail, not because they are unworthy, but because they were conditioned to associate receiving with debt. If he pays, I owe him. If I rest, I must repay with effort. If I receive support, I must over deliver. This is why women burn out relationships, wealth, and opportunities. They cannot receive cleanly. Attention becomes transactional instead of anchored. But wealth does not require repayment, it requires stewardship. And stewardship requires calm. Why, which is another conversation that I'm definitely going to be having on this page, is about how independence isn't a problem. Okay, because there's been a lot of conversations back up in 2026 about independent women, or women being independent, and how it is affecting them having love, power, and wealth. And that isn't true, because independence does not repel men. Dysregulation does. Men do not feel unnecessary around capable women. They feel unnecessary around women who do not allow contribution. There is a difference. A woman who is self-supported but receptive is magnetic. A woman who is self-supported and emotionally braced is closed. Attention becomes guarded instead of seated. Female power is not about doing less. It's about not interfering when things are working. Attention as authority, okay? Authority is not volume. It is not confidence theater. It is not dominance. Authority is attention that does not move when challenged. When a woman speaks and does not soften, when she pauses and does not fill space, when she allows silence to do the work, money responds to this, men respond to this, life responds to this, because attention has weight when it has weight when it is still considered pressure. And do you know what happens to pressure within the body? What happens to pressure within the body when we are in danger or the body is very uncomfortable? The patterns that are embedded in the body, they respond before your mind ever can. And so this is the reason why we've been having so many different conversations about the nervous system and how it plays into being loved, paid, seen, and wealthy. All of these different aspects that I've been putting on social media, all of these are somewhat interconnected, because what I've seen throughout observation of, coaching and mentoring women for over a decade is that when we have an issue with attention, we have an issue with money. When we have an issue with visibility, we have an issue with being present. When we have an issue, these things compound and keep us moving into a loop. And then we become nothing more than a loop of our patterns every time the body is under attack. And that is the reason why I've been bringing up the nervous system. But wealth is not a mindset, okay? It is a nervous system orientation. The body must be able to hold responsibility without collapse, to remain visible without shrinking, to receive without guilt, to desire without pulling back. Most women were never trained here. They were trained to survive, not to stay, and staying is a skill. The greatest lie that was sold to women is that love and money exist on opposite ends of the spectrum. That to be loved, you must be smaller. That to be wealthy, you must be hardened. That to be powerful, you must be alone. None of these are true. What is true is that holding requires capacity, and capacity is built somatically, but not intellectually. I want to bring this here because I feel like this is an important conversation when it comes down to us being more in our bodies than in our heads. Remember, I always say that the body knows before the mind does. I'm not sure if during school that everyone had to do this, but I know I had to teach my students as a middle school teacher. We did have a firefighter come in and they would still do practice to stop, drop, and roll. And I always did wonder, why not just tell the students, hey, when you're on fire, stop, drop, and roll? Until I started doing this work and realized that when the body's under pressure, we tend to lean in into the patterns that are embedded in it. So instead of, if you were to yell at somebody's on fire and you say stop, drop, and roll, it is not going to penetrate mentally. What's going to happen is they're going to do what their instincts, what's embedded in their body. And a lot of us, what happens, the instinct means to run. So people tend to run when they're on fire instead of stop and drop and roll. That's the reason why we bring people in and we practice stop, drop, and roll. Because when it happens, they're and that pressure and they're on fire, instead of them leaning into, being able to think it, their body is embedded in the body. So they immediately, when they come on fire, they stop, drop, and roll. That's the reason why they do all these different practices in school. Is not because of the fact that it's not because it's the fact we just want something to do. We do this because of the fact the body overrides the mind when it's under pressure. And since we know this, we have to practice and train the body and embed these new patterns into the body before they're under pressure. So now when even I wouldn't have to, if I catch on fire, I'm just going to stop, drop, and roll because it's embedded in the body. It's an embedded pattern in my body. I don't have to think about it. And so that is what's happening. So when I'm bringing these conversations up, a lot of people think you can think your way out of this. Unfortunately, you cannot think your way out of a pattern that's embedded in the body, especially when the body feels it's in danger. So if the body feels it's in danger, it's going to rely on the pattern that's embedded in order to exit. And that is the reason why I've been talking so much about nervous system, because I've been coaching for over a decade. And even before, well, that decade is on social media. I was coaching prior to that, before I came on social media and wanted to expand my reach. And I realized that you can sit up here and you can tell a woman, say this. You can tell a woman, no, you shouldn't do that. This is how you should be. This is what you should think. You think you can control everything through mindset, but when it comes to training and having the body practice something, it has to be done a different way. It is not done just by being told what to do. Because when that pressure hits, when attention hits, especially for, I know me for specifically, I talked about this in the last video. I talked about how the pressure of attention had me folding, had me not wanting to show up. It had me not even coming to the point of over explaining or justifying, intellectualizing things or spiritualizing things. That's what people tend to do when that pressure is too much. They lean into that pattern. And so I've recognized it in myself and recognized it in a lot of the women that I've coached. And instead, I gave them a space so they can practice remaining, because that is what it takes. It takes you practicing remaining in order to be able to continue on, even when that pressure is about. So no matter what. And the more that I start to expand on this topic, because I can tell you all, like, I told you I was going in a different direction. The more I started expanding this topic, I realized that if I personally didn't start having these conversations on social media, we weren't going to go to the next level. I was already having this in coaching and one-on-one. I was already helping the women, giving the women a container for them to learn how to remain, to practice remaining, to practice staying. So when attention is too much for you, instead of over justifying, over explaining, you learn how to remain even when the pressure is on, even when it feels overwhelming, even when it feels like something you feel like you're gonna pop. There's so much pressure on you. And so I created a container for women to practice remaining. And I call it inner throne. And the reason I call it inner throne, because when you are under pressure, you have to learn how to remain seated. You have to learn how to remain seated. When you have all eyes are on you and you have a lot of visibility, you have to learn how to remain even though eyes are on you. You have to learn how to remain even when your authority or clarity is being tested. You have to learn how to remain. So I called it the inner throne. Female power that has, I'm getting distracted by, she said, stop, drop, and roll is a great reminder how stop, drop, and roll is a great reminder of how no matter how repetitive and valued work, it is important to remain consistent, must be done. Yes, absolutely. And that's the reason why we do so many of those things. And when I was a school teacher, we did it not just for stop, drop, and roll. We did it for hurricane drills. We did it for fire drills. I think a lot of you think, oh, they just, doing they're actually what they're doing. Every time you would hear that drill, that fire alarm go off, your body's immediately going to go into the pattern that's been embedded. So the pattern that's been embedded is for you to get out of the building and go line up. Your body will immediately take over and do that when that pressure or danger is there. And that's what you want to happen, because the body overrides the mind when you're in danger, when the pressure is too much. And so that's the reason why it doesn't really help for me to sit here and teach women how to get attention from men. Instead of teaching you how to get attention from men, I want to teach you how to remain when attention is on you. Because attention is currency. I know they've been lying to you on this internet, telling you that attention isn't currency when it comes to men, that it doesn't matter. I am going to tell you there's a very big difference in attention, and it can be currency. And once it becomes currency, you can basically do what you will with it. But attention is currency. Why do you think people are fighting tooth and nail to try to get the best content out? Why do you think celebrities are trying to be seen? Why do you think these people are trying to do whatever they can to get all eyes on them, because visibility is currency, attention is currency, learning to be seen is currency. And you also have watched celebrities fall under the pressure of being seen, which is visibility. You've watched even myself say, hey, visibility was something that I felt was too much pressure. I would disappear. I would literally just exit social media for weeks at a time, just because the pressure of visibility, of being seen, was too much for me. At the time, I called it rest. At the time, I called it feminine. But what it truly was the patterns that was embedded in me, because the condition had been in my nervous system, that visibility was dangerous. Too much of it was dangerous. Too much of it would hurt me. Too much being seen and being visible will harm me in some way. And so before I could even think about it, my body had already left the scene. Female power has never been about chasing attention. It has always been about where she sits when attention arrives. Does she scramble? Does she soften? Does she explain? Does she interfere? Or does she remain? Attention is money. Attention is love. Attention is authority. And the woman who learns how to sit with it without flinching becomes undeniable. She does not beg. She does not perform. She does not disappear. She remains. I love this topic. Thank you, Amber. Thank you so much. But I feel like it's, as a person who, does one-on-one coaching, I've done a lot in the past, over thousands of women in the past of coaching one-on-one. And I realized that it was still bring me back to the same issues when it came to coaching women. And I realized, even if I sit up here and I say, hey, I need you to do this, they would do that. But when you leak authority at the mouth, your body will make sure that it does not stand when it comes out your lips. So even if they try to say it like I said it, or try to word it like I worded it, or put the tone behind it that I gave it, it still was not coming across. It still wasn't landing. So I started doing some deep observation among all of the women that I was working with, because I was determined, and I'm always determined, to give solution to women's issues and their level up. And when I go into coaching, I put everything I can in. And so that is where I came, and I realized that I started observing this framework over and over and over. I started observing women who, as soon as they get visibility, they disappear, because the pressure of visibility and being seen was considered dangerous. Before they even think about it, they're gone. The women who, had attention, even attention was a dangerous to them. And so when they would have attention and that the spotlight is on them, and they're having these conversations with men back and forth, instead of them being able to be clear, they're not able to stand in clarity, and they tend to start to over explain. When I would say, hey, this is what you say, and they would be wanting a reason, because they want to explain the reason to him of why they said what they said. And I am standing firm and saying, no, we need to be clear. We need to stand in clarity. And then standing in clarity means standing in authority. And they would just leak it. They would just leak it, and they would try to over explain it. And even if I did not give it to them, they would figure out something to say. And now we would go back over, and I'd be like, that is not what I told you to say. That is not what I told you to say. Why did you say that? And that is when I began to observe these patterns. That is where I began to observe how women are not able to stand up under certain pressure. And instead of them remaining or staying, or having the body practice remaining when these pressures come up, they use their patterns as an exit strategy. So instead of just being in attention and standing within it and staying seated in it, no, they got to over explain to why he can't call her after 9. They got to over explain why she only wants to go here. They got to over explain or justify or spiritualize of why she can't come over to her house. That's when that's when it was spiritualized things. I, believe in this, this, and this, and I don't do this with men. It doesn't matter when you're standing in clarity and your own authority. When you said no, and it's something that you are not going to do, that is all is needed. But I didn't recognize, because I hadn't observed these patterns at the time, I didn't recognize that they couldn't. It literally physically would not happen, because as soon as they were under pressure, they would fold. So I'm going to leave the chat open if anyone has any question, anything you want to add anything to the content. But attention is always going to be currency. That's why everyone is trying to get attention, because if they get attention, they know it can be currency, and it also can mean wealth. And a lot of times, since these things are so interconnected, I found that women who want to be paid, loved, and chosen, you will end up not being able to have these things because your nervous system does not have the capacity for it. You will self-sabotage with the patterns that are embedded in the body. So for the women who are constantly on social media teaching women what to say to men, they're always going to be able to do so. They're going to be able to do that to the end of time, because of the fact that a lot of women leak authority at the mouth. They leak visibility and attention. They leak the things that's going to help them get the thing that they want. Lord, I had this issue just last night, honey. My date tried to kiss me. A first date. I felt I had to explain myself because my nervous system, I just felt it in my body. See? And it's just something that happens until you learn how to you train the body. You literally have to practice. You have to train the body to remain and stand in for that issue right there when it comes to the standing authority. Because one of the things also the little caveat that I picked up from this observation is that when you don't stand in authority, and I'm going to put this warning out to everyone who listens to my content, every woman who considers themselves a pedestal wife, when you don't stand in authority, people will see that they can change your mind. They can see you as a person that they can persuade. And this is where you end up going back and forth with people about something that you want or you desire, or something that you said or you didn't, because they can feel the lack of authority, the authority leaking from you. And this makes you vulnerable in situations, because what if you would have folded just because of the fact that authority felt you felt so much pressure from that you let him come in, or you let him kiss you, or you let him have sex with you. And I'm going to tell you, do you all know how many women have fallen prey to that because they don't have authority and it leaks? And so when they say no, it doesn't really mean no. If a man keeps, going, if a man notices that you can be persuaded or your mind can be changed, they will keep poking at you. And so that's how some women end up sleeping with men, by the way. There's actually a name for it. I just can't remember it off the top of my head. It's literally considered, is it coercion? I don't know. I'm Southern. I can't say certain words. All right. But if you know what it is, put it down in the chat or put it after the video. But I've noticed that becomes an issue. Women end up doing things they do not want to do just because they're leaking visibility, attention, authority. They're leaking, not able to receive, because they look at receiving as a debt. I don't even want to talk about receiving as a debt as much, because I'm going to probably do an entire video about women thinking, or, they believe that receiving is a debt and that a man has leverage over them when they receive. And that tends to play out across the board. And when you have these issues, since everything is somewhat interconnected, it affects your money. It affects you're being paid. It affects your authority. It affects you being able to get the things that you want out of life. I've noticed within myself that it's easy for me to not waste the currencies of time, attention, or money, but I've had to learn how to be receptive to these currencies. I wonder if it's about scarcity. Now we're thinking. I'm glad you're looking into that deeper because, like I said before, since I've been doing this for over a decade, I've been able to observe these patterns, and I realized where the point of location that these things are leaking within women and the patterns they use in order to exit. Women don't say, hey, no, I don't want to do this. Women use a pattern to exit. Instead of them saying no, women say, no, I don't want to do this because of the fact that it's going to be late and I have to go to work and I have all these things to do. Instead of women, remaining and sitting with that pressure and letting the body become trained and practice in it, women will figure out how to relieve that pressure. And see, when you relieve that pressure without, going through it, you're not helping with your capacity. You're actually limiting it. Yes, coercion. Okay, I don't know if I'm saying it right, though, right or wrong, but I know that is a thing that happens. I've talked with a lot of women, and I've learned that seems to be one of the number one tactics that men use in order to get sex from women, because women don't understand it. They feel pressure from these things, and they haven't practiced or trained the body to hold up under that type of pressure. I thought, what about me made you think or have the audacity to do that? Is interconnected. I realize this now. I wanted to run and not stand in my authority. And it's actually normal. And I'm glad you kind of, realize that. It helps when it becomes real and you realize I can, work on practicing and training the body to remain instead of running when that pressure is about. But I have seen this happen over and over and over. And I wanted to have conversation about it because I don't want women to be in that type of position because their body is taking over where their mind has left off at. We believe in, a lot of us are going to probably get off this live stream and we're going to intellectualize this. We're going to try to think through this. And I can tell you, if your body has not practiced or trained to remain, you're still going to fall back into the patterns that are embedded in the body. That is the reason why they train your body to stop, drop, and roll. There's a reason why they train your body to listen to a fire alarm. Because did you know the reason why they did that? Because people will still stay in the building even when the alarm is going off. People stay in the building even when the alarm is going off, not knowing if it's real or not. So they started doing drills in order to have that pattern embedded into the body so that people immediately gather whatever and go to where they designated them to go. Because I know that when I was teaching and we did fire drills, hurricane drills, stop, drop, and roll, I thought that these were things that we were doing just to be doing them. I didn't realize until you start like digging into like neuroscience and somatic and energetic, you start really digging into these things and they're not doing this to do it. They're doing this because they understand that when the body is under pressure or in danger, the body reacts before the mind can think. And I know that even when it comes down to receiving, I know, I'm not sure if let me know in the comment section or in the chat if you've heard this growing up as a young woman, because I know myself that I was taught from some women, because not some of my part, I had like confusion happening. I would have some of the women in my family say receiving from a man is great. And then I had some other women in my family would say receiving from a man means he has control over you. Okay. And I would see examples of that. And so I didn't realize even back then, before I met my mentor, that was somewhat embedded. When you start looking at when you receive something that you have to give something back, do you all know I had to train the body because the mind knows. The mind knows that when you're giving something, you don't have to give anything back. You don't have to, give back equal or multiply something. The body is going to do whatever is embedded, whatever pattern is embedded. And I didn't realize that that's the reason why I operated from a space for a very long time where I saw receiving as a debt. So if someone did something for me, instead of me being cordial or just being thankful and letting them know that, I always felt like I had to go and do more. Like I had to, what is the word? I had to top their gift. I had to do better than them. And that's because when I was given something, the body saw it as dangerous. And so instead of me just being thankful that I was given something, that someone was looking out for me or someone was taking care of me, for a while, I just gave that back to them, or I multiplied, or I tried to top their gift, because that is the pattern that was embedded. That is what the body had been trained for. Because we know. So you all be like, oh, these women are constantly giving men money or constantly doing things for men. Y'all, that is a pattern that's embedded in the body. They know that they should not be giving men money. They know they should not be giving men gifts. They know they should not be taking care of men. But what happens when the pressure is on, instead of them doing what the mind is saying, they do what the body needs. And that means if I am given something, if I receive something, I must go and give something back. When you start listening to this framework, you start realizing all these things kind of make sense now. These things make sense because there's so much content on social media. There's so much information out here. There's so much, and so many embodied women telling women about these things. And some of us, what is still happening. It's still happening, even though the information is out there. The books are out there. The courses are out there. Women are still leaning into their embedded patterns because when the body feels like it's in danger, it bypasses the mind and does what the body needs in order to relieve pressure. This is the reason why I said it. As long as women are giving women the advice or telling them what to say, they're going to have a job. They're going to be able to do that forever. Because some women will still try to think their way through this. And you cannot think your way to getting the body to releasing patterns that are embedded. Everything has to be somatically. But attention is currency. That is the reason why everybody's trying to be seen. They want the attention. And that's also the reason why some people want to get that attention, because attention leads to visibility. And once they realize maybe attention is not the thing that they have pressure on, is visibility. And so they tend to fall to the wayside. Or you've seen this happen over and over with celebrities. You've seen celebrities get the attention they desire or the attention they seek, but then they get visibility. What happens once they get the visibility? That is where they start to crumble. That is where they start to feel that their body's under pressure. And instead of doing the thing that they're thinking of, they do the thing that their body needs. The body needs to relieve the pressure. And so they tend to display behaviors on social media that's going to take away the visibility or take away the celebrity. Some of them go to as far as taking away the celebrity because they can't hold the pressure of visibility. But all these things are interconnected. So yeah, you can be able to hold attention, but you can't be visible. Okay. Perceiving receiving as debt or control is like rejecting what's being given. And it is, because it doesn't feel safe. And the body is only going to go along with the pattern that's embedded in it. And thinking doesn't change it. Because most women think they can think their way out of it. I did too. That's the reason why a lot of my previous content was more about mindset. Mindset work has its place. It really does. I think it really does help with belief and really helping you get a goal or understanding your path. But when it comes to the patterns that are embedded in the body, that's somatic. That's not thinking, that's not spiritualizing, that's not intellectualizing. That is training the body to practice remaining, training the body to practice staying when the pressure is on. That is how you expand your capacity. Yes, the celebrity self-sabotage is a tug of war between what the body knows and what the intellect mind know. And the body wins every single time. I'm gonna tell you, I have been doing this a very long time. I've been doing this long enough to actually create the framework to be able to identify the point of location where the body exits. And I have been doing this so long that the body will win over the mind every single time. The patterns that are embedded in the body will win over all of your thinking. That is the reason why I changed a lot of my content to be more effective, because I want you to win. I could sit back and say, hey, I could have kept doing this type of content I was doing previous, and it was still good content. I'm not knocking it, but I know that this expansion is going to help women be loved, paid, and wealthy. And that is what I want for the women of my community, the Pedestal Wife Society. Because even after this video, I'm quite sure people are going to start looking at the patterns. And you're going to think you can think your way out of the patterns. And you can't think your way out of patterns. Only thing will happen is that you just change patterns. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time. And I've seen so many different examples of women not being able to hold the very things that they say they want. Most women, and people can let me know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I don't know as much as I think I know, but I can tell you this: majority of women want to be wealthy, majority of women want to be loved, a majority of women want to uh, be seen, but not be seen in like a celebrity way, but be seen in the way of the thing that is really level them up, evolve them. Like they want to be seen for that, seen for the thing that they really have their whole mind and heart and soul on. Like for me, even when it comes to the content I create, I really care about the Pedestal Wife Society. I created the community. That thing really matters to me. That is about being seen, and being seen as someone who has values, integrity, and moving in a specific way. When you hear the name, the Pedestal Wife, I want it to be associated with greatness, with a community, with women who, move at their own beat, create their own realities. But most women want to be loved, wealthy, and seen. But what I found that is a lot of times, majority of women cannot hold all three because it stretches the nervous system. The body feels danger for one or the other, all three. Sometimes it's all three, sometimes it's one. One thing they don't feel dangerous in, and the body excels in it. In the other two, they self-sabotage. But attention is currency. That's the reason why people are seeking it out. That's the reason why people are creating. And we have a creative economy where people are creating in order to have their own personal economy. But attention is, regardless of where the attention lands, is still currency. Because I know that there's a lot of training, a lot of content being put out there that attention means nothing. And attention, there's a since everything's so interconnected, you don't want to fall away at attention, since our attention is equals currency. You want to have the capacity to remain when the pressure of attention happens. All right, so I don't have anything else I want to add. I'm going to go ahead and leave the chat open for a few seconds. If you have something you want to add to the chat or a question that you have, I'm going to get ready to go ahead and close out. Make sure I didn't miss anything. I didn't miss any comments. All right, so I don't see any other comments or questions in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and close out. Thank you, ladies, for being here all the way to the end. I appreciate you, Pedestal Wife, for your support, and I will see you all on the next one. Bye.